Welcome to another episode of Unraveling Success. I'm super excited today to have Lindsay Keller with me. Lindsay is with Keller Woods in Thompson, PA. She resides in Edina with her hubby, Ethan, and they have two kids, Grayson and Landon, 5 and 4. So I can relate to the 2 years in a row type of things with kids. So um, she has been at her firm for 19 years and first started out actually as a law clerk, which she'll share a little bit with us in a bit. Um, in her spare time, Lindsay loves Minnesota Twins and is a big Wild fan, enjoys golfing, cooking, ballet, and documentaries. And she says her keys to success are being intentional, organized, focused, having clear goals, reflecting on them daily, setting boundaries, and keeping a positive mental attitude, which I love. So, welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, I'm really excited to dig into your story. But before we do that, would you share with us your definition of success?
Yeah, I think success and the definition of it changes. It's pretty fluid depending on where you're at in your life. For me, currently, I think it's living intentionally. It's very easy to get stuck in just acting reactionally, whether it's, I turn on my emails and I'm responding to emails versus how I wanted to spend the time in my day. And if I have a plan, and obviously things happen in life and each day where it's going to get thrown off a little bit, but if I have a plan and stick to it rather than just having someone else plan my day because I'm reacting to another person's definition of how they wanted to handle that day or the week, then that's successful for me.
I love that. And it's part of the reason why I'm so specific about having a morning routine. And I don't know if you're a stickler on that, but for me, that's a catalyst to success. And it helps me start out my day by taking control of the day.
Absolutely.
Huge.
I think a lot of leaders have a very solid morning routine. I've always stuck with one. Even I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old at home, so things don't, again, always go as planned, but I try to work out every morning. It's usually 20 to 30 minutes. It's nothing too intense, but I get my blood going. I need my coffee, I read the news. Having that morning routine sets me up for success.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. When I was reviewing notes that we had to kind of prepare for chatting today, one of the things that I really loved that you put is that you're not sure you believe in the concept of work-life balance and you like the idea of things coexisting in a harmonious way. And that just really grabbed me because I feel like given your journey, such a healthy way to frame things because there's such a seasonality in life that sometimes it's going to cause us to be out of balance. And I always think of it as you can't move forward, like you can't pick one foot up and put it in front of the other foot without inherently being out of balance, which makes me feel like moving forward in life, if you always have to just be balanced.
Right.
So
completely agree with that.
Yeah, when I read that, I was like, I could not agree with that more.
I think specifically for women, it's like have a balance. I think that it's impossible.
Right. Because you always feel like a failure in some aspect of life then.
Once I had kids, that's exactly the word I used. I felt guilty all the time. I felt guilty I wasn't spending the time at work that I used to. I felt guilty when I was at work and not home with my kids. And that constant feeling of guilt is no way to live. Yeah. And it's so aspirational to have a balance. And it's just, you just do the best you can, but there's going to naturally be something that takes the forefront of your attention.
Yeah. I totally agree. So I know that it was Woods and Thompson, now Keller Woods and Thompson. You've been there 19 years?
I have.
And you started when you were 19.
I think I was 20,
Were you
two when I
22?
started.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. So I was in law school. I was a second year law student when my now law partner offered me a job as a law clerk, which is essentially an intern when you're in law school.
So talk to me about that progression because one thing I really love is that you've been in the same place the whole time. And so I just think it's be fascinating to hear your progression from when you started to where you are right now.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm a very loyal person. But I also love the work and I love the firm. I did work as an intern at a different firm when I was an undergrad to make sure that the legal track was the one I wanted to stay on. But I have experience now dealing with other firms and I could not be happier where I'm at. So that plays a huge role. But started as a intern, a law clerk in law school. I did not think I wanted to do personal injury work or litigation work at all. I thought I would want to do something more contract oriented or business transactional work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when I started, I loved it. And I loved the client interaction. You get that one-on-one where I feel like I do personal injury work. So it's helping people that are at a really difficult time in their life. It was a catastrophic injury or, and that affects your life so greatly. And to be able to work with someone like that and really see the impact that you're making and be an advocate and counselor for them was very rewarding. And from that, I found that I really love the litigation work as well and that courtroom work and the strategy behind that and trying, new ideas. That's been really rewarding too. But I started as law clerk, found out that I really did like the area of personal injury, and then kind of quickly advanced. I did just no fault arbitrations initially, and then started litigation, ran our litigation department, became a partner. I don't even know how many years ago now. And then 5 years ago, I think it's 5 years ago now, the time, especially post-COVID, like this was pre-COVID, I know that, but post-COVID, I'm kind of, it's time warped to me. But I think it was 5 years ago, I took over as managing partner. That's when we put my name on the firm.
That's so cool. One of the things I really like about your journey is you have a very holistic view of how the operation runs because you've sat in so many different seats within the firm.
I think that's really important for any business owner is to really understand how your business is working and you're not. I want to know what my staff are doing. I want to make sure that and if something's not working quite right too, that we have open dialogue if there's a better way of doing things, but I can't have that conversation if I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. I can relate to that so much. And I would say in my business, I have the same experience because I've sat in each seat that there is in an agency. It helps me to foresee need. It helps me to understand a lot of the emotions that they'll go through in certain situations. It helps me to creatively think with them when we're problem solving. Um, Contrasted to people that maybe just bought an agency and have sat in like a principal or managing partner role, right? Um,
Mhm.
that don't have the same insights. I just feel like it gives you such a leg up.
Yeah. There's a lot of overlap in our businesses, Beth. I think, where I'm dealing with insurance all the time, and that's who my claims are against or my, for, if it's no fault benefits. But I'm sure you are seeing, people are calling you when they've had an accident or had a loss and how to navigate that as well.
Yeah.
So just having that insight on, you just didn't buy an agency and it's all new people. It's how to navigate that particular clientele you have is so important.
It is. It is. And I feel like one of the things as you talk, because a question I had, which I'm going to pose the question and I'm going to tell you my takeaways from my experience with you is when I would first meet you, I wouldn't be like, oh, she would be someone that would like litigation, because I think people have a certain perception when they hear that word.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like as I talk to you, I can tell that you're very compassionate and that actually, funny enough, I wrote down the word advocacy that you feel like that's something that really just is something that just really turns on in you. And right before you said it just a few minutes ago, um, tell us a little bit about what it was like first in litigation, and then how did you kind of come to realize like, oh my gosh, I actually enjoy the litigation part of this?
First, it's a very intimidating. I think any new lawyer would share that same feeling. I remember my first court hearing, which was a simple minor settlement hearing. So anytime I get a settlement for a minor, it has to be court approved. So we had the settlement and it was done, but all I have to have is the judge say, okay, this sounds good. So it's a very simple process. And I remember sweating through my suit and just so nervous. I mean, it's intimidating to be in the courtroom the first time. And I remember my first jury trial, which was up in Sherburne County, and driving up Highway 10 up toward Elk River in Minnesota, and just almost dry heaving. I was so nervous. And I didn't know. I'm like, is this something that I want to do? Like, this is awful. Like, I don't want to feel like this all the time. But it is, once I noticed quickly once I started. So like once the trial starts and you get in your groove, it is an adrenaline rush that I have never experienced before. And it's so empowering, and you feel so good helping someone that, you know, not an attorney and can't advocate for themselves properly in the courtroom or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, just like anything else, I still get nervous in any hearing. And I think that's a good thing. That means that it means something to me. I never want to get to a point where, oh, piece of cake, I'm going to walk into this jury trial. I'm an over preparer, and I think nerves are good. I don't want to be like dry heaving though up Highway 10 like I used to be. But that adrenaline rush, I mean, it's amazing, and feeling like I can help someone. I mean, that's why I'm like, this is exactly what I want to do for my career once I started.
Yeah. How long did it take you?
Not too long. I'm fortunate. One thing that I've always really appreciated about my law partner and about the firm has been right away, it was like, here's hearings, go and try them, a lot of, put a lot of faith in what I could handle as a young attorney. And that's really how you learn. I mean, always Paul Thompson's my law partner, and he's always been there to help me prepare whatever help that I needed, but also gave me a lot of, just like kind of free reign over the files, and I'll help as you need it, but you have to figure out your own style too. And there's, that was one thing that really drew me to my firm as well.
I think there's so much to be said for allowing people to kind of make some of their own mistakes and learn from them, rather than have them in bubble wrap. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, having gone through that experience where they kind of put you forward. And so, how does that feel? Do you do that now with new people that come aboard? And what's that feeling like, knowing that that's how you learned? That's a different seat when you're watching people that are doing that now in your firm.
Yeah, it's right now we have a pretty seasoned team. So I don't have any new attorneys in my firm, but my last associate was actually, I taught law school, insurance law, for a number of years before I had kids. And one of my students who was from LA, and then he worked for me for a while and then moved back to LA. I was just so impressed with him, but he was a brand new attorney and so eager to get trial time, trial experience. And it was so fun watching him navigate that. He tried a number of cases for my firm and did an excellent job. And it really reminded me about how invaluable that experience is, and figuring out a lot of the style strategies on your own, because what works for me or Paul or other attorneys at my firm doesn't work sometimes for other people, because we're playing to a jury. And so just stylistically, you don't want to copy someone too much. And right away, you're just an empty canvas on what's going to work for you. So I think there's it's just such a great experience to try a case on your own initially.
Yeah.
And then if you, co-counsel later, or, and I take things from other attorneys all the time like that. That's a great idea. I want to work that in. But initially just trying trial and error to see what works is invaluable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was really fun to watch him flourish. And now he's a great trial attorney.
That's really awesome. Kind of going back to when you were talking about how, when you first started, how nervous you were I read this mentorship, well, listened and read this mentorship thing that I do every morning. And they were talking about stress even late last week. It might even been yesterday. But they were talking about how, stress and excitement, a lot of the same emotions are experienced there, and that how, stress, if you perceive it as negative, can be really damaging. But stress, if you start to reframe it as something that motivates you, or it's excitement, and that you use it as a something to build you, is actually not damaging. So it's really all about how you choose to look at it.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. That too, I was thinking about something similar, thinking about imposter syndrome. Because that's something I've dealt with my entire career. And I think most attorneys have. I definitely know I'm not alone in that. But particularly I've held some roles that I'm like, I'm not qualified. I am qualified, but I just second guess myself all the time. And how I've reframed that is something very similar to what you just shared. It's, it's excitement, but also you just like, you want to be pushed. And that's how I know I'm learning and growing too. And the more uncomfortable I feel, if I think about how just uncomfortable it is, that imposter syndrome can just take over. But if I reframe it that, yes, I'm uncomfortable, but this is how I'm growing and I am qualified to be here, that's helped me so much in getting over some of that. I think I'm always going to have a little imposter syndrome in some situations, but that has helped a lot.
I feel like imposter syndrome is part of being successful.
Absolutely.
I think it's part of the human experience, and it's that voice in your head that no matter how qualified you are, how long you've been in your industry, it's always just going to be this little voice, because I don't feel like you or I see each other, ourselves, the way that other people see me or you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think it's interesting as I've gotten further along in my career, and I'd be curious to hear if this is your experience too, when you start to hear people give you feedback of how they see you. And you're like, oh, it's fascinating. D- I don't see myself that way. And,
And
I mean, obviously, when it's to your face, it's typically good things.
yes.
Um, but it's interesting when you contrast that with imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't.
It's still hard for me to take a lot of positive feedback. Sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, when you downplay it, I think that's kind of human nature,
Yes.
especially for women.
Yes.
And that's just a hard thing to get over, I think. But from the flip side, I don't want to feel like, I'm supposed to be here. I think that's kind of on the opposite end.
Totally.
It's not good either.
I run this weird balance between, I love to share and collaborate, and I get really excited to connect with people and just share stories and compare notes, and one of the things that I have a reel that's in my head is that people are going to think, because I'm sharing and I'm excited to share, that I think I have it all figured out, or like I have an ego. And it's funny because I'll have people say, oh my gosh, that was so helpful that you shared that to me today. I literally just had this happen last Thursday. And I shared something, and then I was like, oh my gosh, did that sound like I have an ego? And then the very next day, I talked to somebody who was a friend of this girl that was at this networking event. And her friend said, um, I can't tell you how helpful what you said was to my friend. And I was like, oh, that's so funny, because my voice inside my head was telling me that I shouldn't have said that.
I think the fact that you have the thought like, oh, is someone going to think I have this huge ego? The fact that you think that means that probably no one is thinking that you just don't have that.
I hope not, but
egocentric personality type, right?
But then at the same time, you have to remind yourself, like, I know the heart behind it, and how other people perceive it is kind of like not my problem.
Yeah.
So Talk to me a little bit. I know you have two littles at home and a marriage, and
Mhm.
family is so important. I always think like money is the most shallow why, and it doesn't matter if you have all the money in the world if you have no one to go home to, and your family life is unhealthy, and we're like if we are physically unhealthy to be able to enjoy the things that we love to do in life. So what are some ways that you keep your boundaries and priorities in a healthy check between, your kids and your family and then work?
I'm still figuring this out,
Yeah.
Beth. Like this, I'm a work in progress here. I have since kids, like I think I wasn't as good before about cutting work off. I feel like I, was always connected, which I'm still pretty connected to work when I'm at home. But there are times where I turn it off, or I'm not afraid to take a day off to spend time with my kid that's home from kindergarten because he has a day off of school. Like I will block myself off that day, and it's Grayson Day. Um, but yeah, I mean that's a constant. That's just something I've been constantly working on.
Yeah.
I'm more cognizant when I'm at home. Like I put my phone away when I get home.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe I'll check it once after dinner, but then I put it back, just make sure that there's nothing pressing or a new client trying to contact me or something. And then I'll pick it up after the boys get to bed. That's, you do the best that you can.
Right.
And then if you feel like you failed, you just try again tomorrow. That's kind of been my motto since I've had kids. As long as I feel like I did the best I could that day, and maybe it wasn't that great, but that's what I could provide that day. And then you just try again tomorrow.
Yeah. I also think there's a lot to be said for not being the perfect parent, right? Not trying to put that. I mean, we all want to do the best we can, but also being human shows to our kids that it's also okay to be human.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of beauty in that as well. Yeah.
I agree. Definitely.
Nothing's
going to be perfect.
No. And wouldn't it be so boring if it was?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you and Ethan do anything in specific, like as a married couple, to make sure that you guys are taking care of your marriage?
This we're working on too. So this changed. My husband got a new job a year ago and does, it's an international sourcing, which has been extremely stressful lately for him in manufacturing, but takes calls later after the boys go down with his team in China, for example. And so that kind of cuts out a lot of our time during the week. We try to get out for dinner on Saturday nights and connect. And then if, I'm a big Twins and Wild fan, and he's a big hockey fan, so if we can go to a hockey game and spend that time together. We are hopeful that we can try to go on a trip or something in the future, but that's been hard with my youngest son who is diagnosed with autism. So we're trying to figure out, if he can be, trying to figure out if we could take a trip away with him or without him.
Yeah. Talk to me.
So again, a work in progress there as well, but we're both really understanding of the situation.
And I feel like there's a seasonality to it too. Like when my kids were really young, I know for me, I started my book of business when the kids were 2 and 3. And so for a long time, like, first of all, we did not have the money to go anywhere. And then the kids were so young that sometimes it's hard to travel when they're so young. I know a lot of people do it. I just never found a lot of joy in that.
The thought of it is so stressful to me.
It is for me too.
Yeah.
And
it's like a wild card. Like you just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we started traveling when the kids, just Adam and I, take one trip a year, just him and I. But the kids were probably later grade school, and which is now it's wild because Evan will be 17 in May and Chloe's 18, and I'm like, I don't know what's happened to my life. Talk to me a little bit about Landon, and I know you mentioned the autism diagnosis. And how long ago was that? And how has that shifted things at home? I think with any diagnosis like that, it has to change the harmony of things, right?
Mm-hmm. Hugely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is going on 3 years ago.
Okay.
And I remember when we first met for lunch,
Mm-hmm.
Landon had been diagnosed days prior, and I felt like a hot mess when we met, and I was not comfortable yet sharing it. Like if I spoke about it, it was true. And I was just in this denial, heartbroken, emotional phase, which I still have periods of time like that because we still don't know how things are going to pan out for him. But he's otherwise healthy. So he was developing along normally and then had regression around right before he turned 2 years old. Where he was saying some words and then stopped, and then he stopped responding to his name. And that's, I knew, so we would go to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician would say, you know what, maybe he has a hearing issue. He doesn't. Maybe he has a brain tumor. Doesn't. So we eliminated the really scary things. And then he was diagnosed with autism. And in Minnesota, you get services through the school district. I don't know how it is in other states, but really quickly, within 30 days, kind of a support from early intervention special education. But it's really, and autism, I didn't know much about it. And no one gives you that much guidance on what you should do. It is a spectrum and all kids are different. And so Landon will be 5 in May, and he is still nonverbal. And he uses his voice a little bit, but not much. So we're working on getting him a speech device, but he's in therapy about 35 plus hours a week, ABA therapy, which has been extremely beneficial, and he has made significant gains. But he's happy and as a cobbler, and I just count my blessings. I know everyone deals with different things, and it's, it kind of, I'm at the acceptance phase, and it's, Landon has he's made everyone in my family a better person. Yeah. And so my boys are 14 months apart, 14 and a half. And my oldest Grayson started kindergarten this year. He just turned 6 last week, and he's a huge advocate for Landon already. Yep. And
I can feel that.
Things, just my whole life, it's, you never know what people are going through. And at home, if I talk to someone and they're crabby on the phone, I'm like, you don't know what they're dealing with that day. Just all around, my tolerance and patience has increased drastically.
I bet.
But we just, every moment that we have and we're happy, it's a win.
Yeah. Different lens in life.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit. I know that you've mentioned the community of people with supporting that maybe have siblings or children with autism, but tell me a little bit about that community as you've plugged in and got to know people and how that's impacted you.
Yeah, this has been a hard one for me, initially especially, and I'm just starting to get warmed up to it. When Landon was younger, it was really, so many people are affected by autism. And once I felt comfortable sharing that, which took a little while, I felt like a lot of people were like, oh, my friend's son or daughter has autism. Also, you guys should be friends and can connect. And it was making those connections were scary for me because I didn't want to make the comparisons between our children. Right. This person has an autistic daughter and she's 12 and still is nonverbal. And I was so, it kind of deterred me from reaching out and making those connections. And I know it would be beneficial. And I've slowly started to open up to that. And I think you just have to be comfortable in where you're at. I'm still not fully there. There's a mom that reached out that lives near me, and she's just been incredible. But her son is a few years older than Landon and went through the same therapy group, but then also has a daughter that goes to the same school as Grayson.